Florida Keys, as always. We're excited to be back, and my wife and kids really love coming down. I've got a couple kids in camp this week, so they didn't make the trip with us, but my wife and our oldest came down. I got another event up the road that we're going to speak at and then head back. But it's always great to be here. We really appreciate everything. We got some really good announcements today. First, I want to recognize, you're going to hear from Roger Young as our Executive Director for the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission. Your state rep, Jim Moody, is here, Florida's 120th House District. And then we have Captain Matt Bellinger, owner and charter captain, Bamboo Charters, and is also part of Captains for Clean Water. So we have done, since I've been governor, historic investments in conservation efforts, in making sure that Florida's waterways are clean, and making sure that we're restoring the Everglades so water flows to Florida Bay as God intended. And we've done more on that than anybody has ever done. We're proud of all of that, but one of the things we've done that's really impacts the Florida Keys is our focus on coral reefs and supporting the restoration of reefs, the protection of reefs. So we've been able to do more than any administration in history with respect to that. And of course, it's not just in this part of Florida. I mean, we have reef going all the way up to St. Lucie Inlet, but this is something that we put a lot of emphasis on. So in March, I did $9.5 million through our Coral Reef Restoration and Recovery Initiative to support academic and private partnerships that will help safeguard Florida's coral reef. And last year, we invested a record $47 million for coral reef restoration and for coastal protection. I think when I became governor, you're talking about a few million was going into that. And we are doing the same thing this year. So that means we can say, since I became governor, we've done $114 million for coral reef recovery and coastal protection efforts. You've never seen anything like that. And to put that in perspective, what we've done in the current year's budget, what we did in the budget I signed last week that will take effect in July 1, both of those years, our support for coral reefs through our own state budget exceeded the total investment requested by the Biden administration for coral reef restoration across the entire United States. And, they're spending money on everything. I mean, they spend billions of dollars to create like 3 charging stations, for electric vehicles. I mean, it's crazy. So we're actually doing things that impact the state of Florida, I think, in a very, very big way. So these reefs are an important part of the ecosystem here. It's a part of our state's ecology. It helps protect against storms. And of course, it does attract visitors and tourists year-round. This is more of the low season, but people still come. Even then, obviously, when it gets cold other places, I mean, people beat a trail down here faster than you can imagine. I remember during COVID, all the people fleeing down here, and a lot of them never left. They just stayed in the Keys throughout the whole time. Not a bad decision. So, but we're dedicated to doing this. So today, we are adding from the budget that I signed, we'll be able to distribute an additional $5 million dedicated to artificial reefs through FWC. And Roger will talk about what we're doing that. But this is all in an effort to support the establishment of a new framework for installing, overseeing, and preserving artificial reef habitats in the Florida Keys. So we now have more than 4,300 planned public artificial reefs that have been placed in state and federal waters off Florida's coast. And we've done $26.5 million through the balance of our administration on artificial reefs. So I'm proud that we've been able to do that. Now, and there's a couple other things I'm going to announce, but on the budget stuff, we're doing all of this with record funding for environment and conservation efforts. We've done record funding for transportation and infrastructure. We've done record funding for education, both K-12 and higher education, and Florida, for the second year in a row, has been ranked #1 overall in education by U.S. News and World Report. Some of the infrastructure things that we've done, adding additional money so we can accelerate projects. Some of these projects weren't even supposed to start until 2030, 2035. So we're now going to be able to break ground quicker, and we're going to finish them 7 to 10 to 15 years ahead of schedule. When has government ever done something ahead of schedule? That's just not the norm of what we're doing. So these are really significant investments. We're using taxpayer dollars prudently, but these are by far the most substantial investments that we've ever done. However, even though we're doing that, even though we're dedicating taxpayer resources to things that are really important in a major, major historic way, the budget that I signed last week still actually spends less than our current year budget. Who is reducing spending overall throughout this country? Not very many people. And included in the budget is money to do accelerated debt repayment. So we now have the lowest per capita state debt of any state in these United States. And we've paid down 36% of Florida's total taxpayer-supported debt just since I've become governor. So we're going to do a lot more than that over the ensuing years. And we're running a massive surplus. Now we're going to be over $17 billion in surplus. We've tripled or maybe even quadrupled our rainy day fund. So there's been a lot that's been done. But if you go back a few years ago, especially when COVID, everyone said, we were going to have like massive financial problems, weren't going to be able to do all this. And it turned out just the opposite. It turned out that with good leadership and prudent decision making that you can do well. So, I look and see in Washington, they're now projecting another annual budget deficit of $2 trillion. Used to be, you wouldn't even, our federal government, even 50, 60 years ago, was spending, tens of billions of dollars on a year. Now that the annual deficit is close to $2 trillion. And of course, that's really been the number one reason why you've had prices increasing and inflation on everything that people need to be able to live their lives. So we're proud of the investment, but we're also proud that we're able to do that overall in the context of a budget that is really sound, very responsible, and protective of taxpayer money. So that's the first thing. The other announcement that we're going to do is we have done different things and made a lot of efforts to deal with invasive species. One of the things we do in the Everglades is go after the Burmese pythons. We have python challenges. We have a lot of people taking a lot of these out. It's tough because they replicate so quickly. And so there's new things. We put a lot of resources in to do that. But another issue that we've been dealing with in Florida for many years now is the lionfish, and how lionfish are very, very invasive, how they're really wreak havoc on the ecosystem. So we currently have underway our annual lionfish challenge. I know a lot of people are participating in that. This lionfish challenge started in May. It runs till September 2nd, 2024. Now, this is a way for the public to be able to engage in conservation by bringing in as many lionfish as they can to win prizes. They'll also be contributing to protecting our natural resources. You can register in one of two categories if you want to do it, recreational or commercial, and registration is very easy. You just go online to FWCreefrangers.com, FWCreefrangers.com. So since 2014, the state of Florida has overseen the removal of over 1 million lionfish from our oceans, and we need to do more. Now, you do get prizes if you win. So normally participants who are over 25 lionfish or for commercial 50 pounds get rewarded with the ability to harvest an additional spiny lobster every day from state waters during the 2024 sports season. I know a lot of people appreciate that. Well, we're going to up the ante. So this year, for those who reach those benchmarks, you get to harvest 2 lobsters per day for spiny lobster season, and I know a lot of people will really be appreciative of that. So thank you for your efforts there. We want to make sure that that we do all we can to remove the lionfish. Now, speaking of lobster season, I'm happy to announce, so we have our annual 2-day mini lobster season on July 24th and 25th, and of course our main season runs and will again from August 6th through March 31st. But we have those 2 days where you're able to go in and participate. But we've got a lot of tourists that come to do that, which is fine. I mean, look, it's good for restaurants, it's good for hotels, all these other things. But we also want to make Floridians make sure that they have adequate opportunity. So I'm happy to announce that we are adding an additional day for our mini lobster season. It'll be Sunday, July 14th, but this will give preference to Florida residents. So the July 14th date will be only for Florida residents, where you'll be able to go and participate. So I hope everybody is able to do that, and I hope they have fun with it. And again, as always, we will have regular lobster season open in August and run through the end of March. So we're excited about that opportunity. We're excited about what's going on down here. Look, we're a very big, diverse state. We've got a lot of differences in terms of parts of the state. Some have beaches, some over here. There's this. But the Florida Keys are really a unique jewel for the state of Florida. It's a neat place to be. People down here in Monroe County, and I know we've dedicated a lot of resources to be able to help with issues as they've come up down here. You can count on us to continue to do that going forward. So with that, I'm going to bring up Roger Young, who's the Executive Director of Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Governor. Appreciate it. It is an honor and a blessing to be here back in the Florida Keys, where I love so much. And Governor, we just appreciate your leadership and your steadfast commitment to the environment and to the residents of the state of Florida. We are truly blessed to have a governor and a leader who cares so much about our resources and the people of this state. And it's the resources that makes the Florida Keys so special, because this truly is a special place. People come from all over the world, but the people that live here know it the most, how special this place is. From lobstering to world-class fishing opportunities, Florida and the Florida Keys really is the fishing and boating capital of the world, where people come from all over, as it should be. So like so many families, my family and I have been coming to the Keys for years to enjoy the different opportunities that are down here, the great, fantastic boating opportunities, whether it be fishing for tarpon down around Lower Matacumbe, catching bonefish in the backcountry out of Lignum Key, enjoying lobster season, or heading offshore and passing the iconic alligator reef light as we go off into the Gulf to catch dolphin or whatever adventure lies in front of us. It is just a truly honor to have those experiences with our families and with our friends and build those memories that last lifetimes and generations. And I know the residents of Florida know that oh so well, because it happens so much. It happens, and it's passed on from generation to generation. So, like the governor announced, we're excited about the one-day prequel mini-season that we're going to have on July 14th. And this is just an excellent opportunity for residents, for Florida residents, and for locals here in the Florida Keys to enjoy their time with our resources and have memories with their families and their kids together, making those memories that'll last lifetimes and generations before the mini-season that's going to come. Because let's face it, most of us down here in the Keys, if you were down here and lived here during mini-season, you're probably working those 2 days because it's very busy with a lot of visitors. So this is a great opportunity for the residents of the Keys in Florida to get out there and enjoy that experience with their families and build on those memories. And because of strong management from the state of this resource, this allows us to provide this opportunity to our people and for this fishery. So we're really excited about that. And thanks to our staff for being so diligent on that. And thanks again, Governor, for prioritizing the environment through historic funding for future generations so they can enjoy the same recreational opportunities that my family and that so many families have had through the years. And with your support, we will continue the important work. And there's a lot of important work out there. We're working to promoting, like the governor said, the removal of invasive species like lionfish that negatively impact our waters with the lionfish challenge that's out there. And also with the coral reef restoration, such important work that's being done by our members, our staff members, and our biologists at the Florida Research Institute, the Fish and Wildlife Research Institute, along with others that are helping with that issue. And we're doing all we can and we really appreciate that funding to augment the artificial reefs that so benefit our aquatic habitats, and we can't thank you enough for that. And continuing on to the work with that mission of the FWC is the actual mission of the FWC, which is managing fish and wildlife resources for their long-term well-being and the benefit of the people. And as we say that while we work at the FWC, a lot of times we focus on the front end of that, is the long-term management of the resources. But what we forget about so often is the benefit of the people. And that's what is so important. And that's what we're trying to do is we match those up. So we can manage those resources for their long term, but also make sure our families in Florida and our residents and our visitors are enjoying that experience for future. So again, special thanks to our FWC staff that work so hard to be able to have these opportunities all over our state, but especially here in the Keys where we have so many issues with some of our species that they've been working diligently and so hard. And a special thanks to the FWC officers around the state, but particularly here in the Keys, who work so hard to protect paradise. We appreciate what they do. And again, Governor, thank you for the unprecedented support for law enforcement across this state and the residents, and for the protection and the support for the protecting of our resources. We greatly appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay. You know, we've worked at FWC to make sure that our resources are there for the enjoyment of the people of Florida and the people that visit. But, you know, you have this issue with the snapper. So, and I don't know why it ended up this way, but the federal government manages Atlantic red snapper. The state manages, within, I guess, federal guidelines, the Gulf red snapper. So I got in, and, you know, all these fishermen are telling me there's so many more snapper than what the federal data is saying. And I believed them. So I told my guys, I was like, you know, everyone that's there sees all these fish, and yet you look at the data, and the data claims there's no fish there. So we really went to work. They did a lot of diligent work, and we wanted to be able to expand opportunities for Gulf red snapper for, you know, that is consistent with the facts that are actually there. And so they've been able to do it. So this year, we're doing the largest Gulf red snapper season in modern history, the longest by far since we have taken over state management, and we did the record last year. We beat it this year, but it's like 103 days, I think. So that's on the Gulf side. How many days is the federal government giving for Atlantic red snapper? I think it's 1, maybe 2 days that they're doing, because they're using faulty data. There's way more fish in the sea than what they're saying. We've shown that with what we've done in the Gulf, but I just think it's important that our agencies are really drilling in and doing the good work, and FWC really did that so that we've been able to deliver. And this is a huge thing for people, particularly in Northwest Florida, particularly on our Gulf Coast, to be able to go out and do that. And I know there's a lot of anglers chomping at the bit to be able to have a more realistic season in the Atlantic, but the federal government, you know, they're just basically saying no, 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 and they're relying on a lot of really faulty data. So I think FWC has done a lot of great stuff for the people of Florida, but that contrast between Gulf red snapper managed by the state, 103 days, Atlantic red snapper managed by the federal government in like 2 days, one or 2 days. You know, that really just shows you the difference between how Florida does things and how the federal government does things. Okay, Jim.
Thank you, Governor, for being in Monroe County. Normally my texts say the governor will be somewhere. It'll be 8 o'clock in Doral or 8 o'clock in North Miami, and I go to Peter. Peter, I'm sorry, but I can't get up before in the morning. But please tell the governor I wish I was there. But in all honesty, Governor, thank you for what you've done for us. This district is so dynamic. You know, Holly, now the mayor of Monroe County, I'm following her, but she's worked hard. Former representatives have worked hard. But a great example of how much you care about this district is when, on the last day, before the budget was submitted back and forth between the Senate, I requested $2 million in emergency funding through Chair Leak, which you approved without a question, no doubt about it, on the spinning fish. We're yet to come out what that's happening with those things, but the point is, you didn't question that whatsoever. Last session, you approved another $5 million for artificial reefs. Previous session, $10 million for our reefs. Artificial reefs are necessary in today's world. We can't fix what's already gone out there, but we can now enhance. And through support from the governor's office, we're going to make sure that we have an ecosystem that thrives is good for Florida, is good for our tourism, and good for our children in the future of Monroe County in particular, in the state of Florida. So from my heart, I say thank you. I really do, because it means a great deal to this audience here. It sort of goes unnoticed a lot of times. You know, you don't get the pats in the back that you always deserve, in my opinion. But you deserve a massive round of applause for what you've done to support not only Monroe County, but Everglades restoration. So thank you so much for what you've done for Monroe County.
Sure. Okay, Matt, come on up.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Matt Bellinger, Bamboo Charters. I've been guiding people in, on, and underwater down here for about 35 years now, and seen the ups and downs, and a lot of different governments come through, and not blowing smoke, but he's kicking butt. Coming in with your funding, thank you very, very much. What you're doing is making a big difference. The big thing we have to remember when we're down here, you hear sometimes people talk about our water and your water and their water, and sometimes they forget that the water that falls in Orlando comes down to Okeechobee. Some of it, and more of it soon, will be making it into Florida Bay, but comes out into the Gulf, comes out in the Atlantic, ends up here in Florida Bay. That water doesn't stay in Florida Bay. That water ends up right here, right out in the Gulf, out in the ocean, and goes upstream someplace. We all live downstream of somebody else's problems, and it ends up in our yard. And it affects us, every one of us. You don't have to be a fisherman. You don't have to be working on the water here. But all of us rely on tourist dollars that come from that water right there. And with the moves they're making, things will get better. It's amazing what you can see when this rain we just had the last 2 weeks. Northeast Florida Bay right now is like it used to be. It's insane, the snook bite, the redfish bite, the trout and such. When we start getting this treatment, and the other treatments that we get that end up out on the reef, our fisheries, our snorkeling, the environment that we just live for is going to be so much better. And these efforts, just as they keep going, it keeps getting better. But the big thing to remember is we're all downstream from somebody else's problems, some other waste that might make it here. When these guys take care of things, you do see a huge difference. It makes a big difference. Florida Bay and the Everglades, when it sneezes, the rest of our environment, it catches a cold. It gets sick, and you can see it happen. But again, with these efforts, we just got to keep going. The local economy will keep going. It'll get better. More people want to come here. Our prices of our properties will keep going. If our bay dies, if the Gulf dies, our property prices are going to fall through the ground. That's not a good thing. But the thing to remember is there was a long time ago, there was a rhyme. It was called the Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner, and I'm just going to cut to it real quick. He says in it, water, water everywhere, and nary a drop to drink. Think about that. With the efforts that these guys are making right now, we're not going to have to worry about having water to drink and water to enjoy down here. Thank you.
All right. Yeah, I mean, I think if you look, so we have a reservoir that's on the eastern side of Lake Okeechobee, and that is to take water, clean it, and make sure that it's not getting into the estuaries. We're going to have one on the west side of Lake Okeechobee done soon, and then we've done ahead of schedule, our part of the southern reservoir south of Lake Okeechobee, the stormwater treatment. So, but in the federal government, they just take longer on some of this stuff, but the amount of money because of, or the amount of water because of what we've done there, what we've done to do things like raise Tamiami Trail, you have more water going to Florida Bay than has come down through the Everglades in decades. I mean, we're at a modern high because, a lot of what nature and God intended was changed by man over the years. And so we're helping to restore the flow, and we've come a long way. We're gonna keep doing more. But when we started doing this and we got some of the stuff, and obviously we got big funding the first year, 2019, but it takes some time to get the projects going. But as they started doing it, they would see a difference in the salinity levels in Florida Bay, and really positive differences there. I mean, I've heard fishermen say things are looking better. So that's really important. And it ties into the economy. It ties into tourism. Although, I do have Floridians from time to time tell me saying like, we have enough of, everyone wants to come here. We want our little space sometimes. Well, I'm not asking anyone to move here, but it's just, I think people look out their options who have the wherewithal to move. And a lot of times they have greener pastures down here. But so a lot of it's economy, but a lot of it is just, this is the right thing to do. We have responsibility to turn over Florida to God better than we found it. And that's what I said I would do my first day in office, and that's what we've continued to do. So we've had a historic run here with the conservation efforts. Obviously, we got a lot more to do, but I'm really pleased with the progress. The legislature has been great in supporting these efforts. And it used to be, people thought when we first came in, we had a big agenda, that it just wasn't achievable because that just wasn't how people had done business. Now we're at the point where pretty much everyone's like, yeah, we got to keep this stuff going. It's been effective. So I'm excited about that. All right, we got any questions back there?
Governor, I have two questions. My first question is about coral restoration. We've spoken to some biologists who are working on that right now. We're super grateful for the funding. They're doing a lot of the work. There's worry this year that we're on track to have waters as warm as we did last year, which is what bleached a lot of the coral. Are you worried that there's just going to be now sort of an outflowing of necessary money?
Well, look, I mean, we obviously can't control the temperature of the water. I mean, but I mean, the reality is, we look to see issues and we try to address them. Now, sometimes resources are important. Sometimes there's policy changes that need to happen. But in this case, I think it's something that the investment's been important, and I think it's something that we want to continue to do.
And it's something that you're planning to do.
It does.
Okay. The other question is, we just learned today, and this is off topic, forgive us, that the Citizens Property Insurance Group voted unanimously this morning to recommend raise the 2025 rates. Can you talk about that?
So first, 2024, obviously we did a lot of reforms in 2022 at the beginning of 23, and we said it's not just going to happen overnight. It takes time for the market. So we've had 8 new companies enter the market, which they're leaving other states, like California or whatever. They're actually coming into Florida, putting private capital in to offer policies. Citizens has depopulated pretty significantly as a result of that, but interestingly, you got a chunk of people on Citizens who got on private and actually got lower rates on private. So Citizens is usually below actuary, and I think that's true mostly. But in this case, there were things that are done. We've had 10 companies file for no increase in rates for the 2024 year, and there have been 8 companies that have filed for a decrease in rates. Now, not 25% decreases, you're talking about 0.5% here, but if you look at what had been happening when the market was really destabilized, you have that. Citizens increases are capped statutorily by the legislature. And so whatever Citizens has had over the last few years has not been as much as what you've seen in the private sector until I think, now you're starting to see with the private market, those rate filings. So that's what the rate filings have shown. I think the 90-day average for rate filings has averaged a 1.6% increase. For example, you go back 2 years, it was much higher than that. And the only reason you're seeing companies come into Florida, the only reason you're seeing those types of rate filings in the private market is because that we did reforms to bring some sense to this market. And we'll know, I think by the end of this week, beginning of next week, what the reinsurance rates are going to be. So if someone sells you an insurance policy, that company then turns around and buys reinsurance in case of catastrophic loss. Those companies are international companies. They're not just local companies. But they had been, we saw 2 or 3 years ago, really big reinsurance increase, which if they're increasing the rates they're charging the primary carriers, that is going to be passed on to policyholders. That's what happens. So then we did a big series of reforms about 1.5 years ago, and the reinsurance were supposed to go up 50%. Instead, they went up 25%, which is a lot. But had we not done anything, that would have gone up even more. Now we think the reinsurance is going to come in pretty stable for 2024. That means that there's not going to be a need or an incentive to pass any of that on from a company to a policyholder. And then finally, I'd point out in our budget, I mentioned $1.5 billion in tax relief. $500 million is traditional sales tax holidays, back to school, disaster preparedness. July is our Freedom Month, so no sales tax on outdoor recreational items and concert tickets, things like that. We have a tool tax holiday. It's all important. We have almost $500 million on toll relief. People, and it may not be as pertinent in the Keys as it is in some other places, but you know, like Miami, Orlando, people going to work, they're getting hit with tolls left and right. Any commuter now can qualify for a 50% reduction monthly basis in tolls, and that's almost a half of them. But the biggest chunk we did in the tax relief was over $500 million in reducing taxes and fees that are on people's homeowners policies. And the insurers have to put it on there so that you see the deduction. And our goal was, you know, we want to reduce those, and we want that relief to go to people's pockets. We don't want it to go, you know, to the insurance company's kitties. And I think we structured it in a way where that's going to be very transparent, and they're going to have to show the deduction in the various taxes and fees that go on the different policies. But we still are in a situation overall. This affects all insurance. It affects everything you buy. You know, we still have inflation increasing in this country. They say, oh, the media, oh my gosh, are they trying to spin a tale? It's all to help Joe. But that's what they're doing. They're trying to say inflation is down so sharply. If inflation was 9% a year and a half ago, and now it's 3%, understand, those old prices haven't come back, the lower prices. It all builds up on top of that. So if you had 9%, 8%, 7%, that continues to build. You know, we took our kids through the McDonald's drive-through. I mean, we got some Happy Meals, a couple other things. I mean, it was like $50-some for everything we got for a family of 5. And my wife and I didn't really get that much. So it's just, you see that in everything you do. The number one item that has increased in the last year in our inflationary environment nationwide has been auto insurance. It's going up like 23, 24% over the course of a year. So that is still just a fact of life, that if you want to build a house or repair a house, it just costs a lot more today than it did 4 or 5 years ago. And that's the thing. It's like, you know, the state budget, we're $116.5 billion for a state of 23 plus million people. Federal government, you know, they run more of a budget deficit on a monthly basis than the state of Florida spends all year. I mean, they have $200 billion deficits. That's not out of the question. Certainly, they're always $150 billion on a monthly basis. That's just the deficit. So what we do in terms of spending is in restraint is not necessarily not likely going to move, you know, this national economy of what we're doing in terms of inflation. It is driven by the Federal Reserve. It's driven by the Congress and the administration, and to borrow and spend. And here's the thing, you know, you're borrowing, spending all this money. They did this big infrastructure bill, and they say, well, you know, hasn't Florida benefited from the infrastructure stuff? And I think that the true answer, non-political answer, is that Florida's benefit has basically been zero, and I think that's true with other states, because even if you take the money that states have gotten, the cost of projects have gone up so much that it basically eats up the amount of federal support that you're getting. And we've had to put in more money in our projects in the budget the last couple years. Things that I thought were fully funded, they now come back to me and they say we need 40% more money. I'm like, why? They're like, because the cost of construction and this, and they go through the list, and I mean, it is what it is. I mean, it's unfortunate, but that's just the reality that we face. So to be in a situation where, you know, this reinsurance comes in relatively stable, which is, I think, our anticipation, in a high inflation environment with the overall economy, the only reason that we're in a position to have that is because of the reforms, you know, that we've done. But, you know, our state, if I could reel in the federal government spending as governor, I would do it. Trust me, we would get that done. But it's still an inflationary environment. And the price increases, while the rate may be lower than what it was a year and a half ago, it is cumulative increases, and it continues to go up. So I think people need relief. That's why we did the relief that we did in the tax relief, the toll relief, the tax relief on the insurance policies, and then the different sales tax holidays, because I think it matters to people if you're able to do that and able to get that done. Okay, great to be here. Thanks, everybody. We appreciate it.